This video will be of special interest to pilots or students who want to fly at the Miraflores Paragliding site in Lima, Peru. I'm mainly doing this for my students because they often find it complicated to do their first flights in this area. While the flight itself is very calm because it's dynamic, landing can be a bit tricky due to the small landing area. There are some tricks you need to know to fly safely here. Still, I believe some of the concepts covered here can also help in other similar flying areas, especially those near the sea and in dynamic conditions. We take off, and you sit down. When we fly toward the lighthouse, we never fly close to the small slope here because there's rotor. You should always fly further away from the edge of the smaller slopes. We fly in a straight line, compensating for the wind drift. The wind will always push us toward the city, so you need to use your body and brake on the opposite side to counteract it. When we reach the lighthouse, we'll take advantage of the rising wind, as the wind comes from the southwest, which is the dominant direction, and the slope here faces that wind more directly. When we're over the tennis courts, we'll make a left turn. Always turn toward the sea, never toward the city. To turn, always look behind first to make sure no one's there, and then turn. The flight path around the lighthouse should be between the tennis courts and past the lighthouse, because that's where the wind lifts the most. The slope here is perfectly aligned with the southwest wind. For students doing their first flights in Miraflores, there are a few important things to keep in mind. One of them is that after taking off from the paragliding site, you need to fly directly to the slope where the lighthouse is. The reason is simple. The predominant wind in Costa Verde is from the southwest, and the slope facing that direction is the one by the lighthouse. Now, you need to compensate for wind drift. The pilot or student must head toward the lighthouse slope, but if you just fly directly there, the wind will slowly push you toward the city. So, to compensate for this drift, you need to turn your body and use a bit of brake on the opposite side. This way, you'll fly in a straight line. Otherwise, if the pilot flies straight to the lighthouse, the wind will gradually push them off course, creating a zigzag pattern. This is what's called the dog curve. You need to avoid it for two reasons. First, it's inefficient. You'll lose a lot of altitude going back and forth. Second, in the process of constantly correcting the direction, an inexperienced pilot could start to pendulum. It's common to see a student going from point A to point B and starting to swing back and forth as they adjust. Once they gain momentum, they end up flying straight while fighting the pendulum motion. This can be dangerous, especially if they're flying near another paraglider or close to a mountain, as they could collide while swinging. Another unique aspect of Costa Verde between the paragliding site and the lighthouse is that you need to fly in a straight line, not follow the contour of the cliff. What happens is, the slope forms a U shape, like a bowl, which normally helps channel the wind and creates better lift. But the small slope at the bottom generates turbulence where there should be lift. The wind hits the smaller slope and creates rotor, so if we fly over it, we'll encounter turbulence, which could cause rapid descent or collapse the wing. To land, we need to make the approach by heading out toward the sea. If we're too high, we use big ears. How far we go out to sea to lose altitude depends on the wind's strength and direction. For example, if the wind is strong and directly facing us, we need to go far out to sea with big ears to lose enough altitude to land low. If we arrive too high, we'll miss the approach and have to try again. On the other hand, if the wind is light or not directly facing us, we may need to fly almost directly to the landing zone. If we head out to sea to lose altitude, we might arrive too low and miss the landing. The same goes for crosswind. If the wind is strong but coming from the side, we need to fly straight to the landing zone without heading out to sea, and it's best to use the speed bar in this case. Depending on the wind strength, we'll need to gauge how much altitude we lose relative to the landing zone. Right now, we're about 50 meters above the landing, so we could start the final approach. For the final approach, use those 4 bushes as a reference. Fly over them and follow their line, but only if you have enough altitude to clear them. If not, fly in front of them. The goal is to enter the landing zone gradually without flying behind the wall, as you might encounter rotor there, causing a sudden drop or collapse. You need to enter the park at an angle, roughly following the wall of the paragliding site. The trick is to face into the wind as you enter the park. If you enter and pick up speed due to inertia, it will be harder to face into the wind afterward. Once you're over the wall, release the big ears and face into the wind. Use the windsock as a reference and always aim a bit more to the north than where the windsock is pointing. That's all for takeoff, flight, and landing at the Miraflores Paragliding site. Let me know in the comments if this information helps you at other flying sites. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for listening.